Savage, and I'm a 28-year-old testicular cancer survivor in Shreveport, Louisiana. Before I get started, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that bell button so you won't miss any of my future episodes. Bear with me on this first episode, guys, as I kind of figure out how I'm going to do this. Several friends suggested that I should try it, and so here we are. I wanted to spend this episode recapping my thoughts, feelings, and that type of thing on my chemo journey, so the past 3 months. Chemo started for me on April 13th, and I remember going in that first day having no clue what to expect. I'm trying not to get emotional. I had no idea what to expect. I ended up getting all 3 drugs that day. It was called BEP. So that would be bleomycin, etoposide, and cisplatin. I was there from about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning till about 4:30 in the afternoon. And that was consistent with all of my first Mondays of each cycle. So I had 3 cycles. The next days after that, the Tuesday through Friday, were only the 2 drugs, the etoposide and the cisplatin. But the cisplatin can cause kidney damage, so they want to make sure that it gets flushed out right away. So I always got a lot of fluids on those days. And so I was there on the Tuesday through Friday, probably to about 2 o'clock, depending on how the nurses did the fluids, if they ran them in conjunction with the drug or not. That was always left up to the nurse to decide. And then the next 2 Mondays were just bleomycin. And so that was what they called a manual IV push. So they would come in and manually push it through my IV. They would give me a 1-minute dose, make sure that I didn't have any reactions to it. A lot of people go into anaphylactic shock and have different reactions or trouble breathing from the drug. It's the drug that was probably the hardest on my body. And then they would give me fluids for about 30 minutes and then come back and do the final 10-minute push through the IV. And then a week later, we would start over again, and that was the complete cycle. So it was 21 days, a total of 63 days, and tomorrow is my last day of infusion, but the cycle will actually end a week from that. Overall, my chemo wasn't too bad. During my first cycle, days 7 to 10, actually every cycle were probably the worst. During my first cycle, during those days is when I became dehydrated and lost fluids too quickly. That first weekend, and we ended up having to call the paramedics, and I went into the ER and had to get some extra fluids that day. The second cycle, I did a lot better around that time. I guess I was a little more prepared for it that time. This past cycle caused some problems again. My blood pressure dropped to 81/50 or something like that, so pretty low. And we almost had to go into the ER again, even being prepared for it. So I really had to push fluids, particularly during that time of each cycle. After that first day, the nurses told me about this kind of numbing gel that I could put on my port that would make that not hurt so bad. So each day would look like me kind of getting up, eating breakfast. I would rub the numbing gel on the port because it had to be rubbed on about 30 minutes prior to whenever it was going to be done. And then I would use press and seal, just like you would get in the kitchen section. It works well on skin. Who would have thought? And would press and seal wrap on it until I got to the doctor's office. Every Monday, they would do labs and test for my neutrophil counts, which are my white blood cell counts, to see what those were, and a couple of other different things to make sure that it was okay to give me my infusion that day. So every Monday, I would go in, they would access my port, which means they just stick the needle into it, make sure there's some blood flow there, and then pull blood samples for the labs. That was done on the second floor. Then I would go up to the third floor, meet with the doctor and hear the results of those labs, and then come back down to the second floor to get a room for an infusion. The rooms were actually very nice. They had heated chairs, massage chairs. They would bring in snacks, Powerades. Powerade should have probably sponsored me during the first part of this journey. It was the only thing that kept me hydrated and that I seemed to like to drink. That kind of wore off during the latter part of this third cycle. My taste buds definitely changed throughout this journey. Each cycle was kind of a little different. Let's see. During my third cycle, I don't think anything really happened too much that was eventful during my second cycle. But during my third cycle, I ended up getting a temperature, and it lasted, it started right about on my birthday. And I went out and had a dinner with some friends and kind of cheated a little bit for my birthday, because the chemo gives me a weakened immune system. So I'm not supposed to eat any food during this time that wasn't washed and prepared by myself. But I did kind of go out and cheat a little bit that day. And I took some Tylenol and then ended up calling in the next day to the hospital. I had called in that night as well. And that was day 3 in a row of having a temperature. And so I ended up going into the hospital the morning after my birthday dinner and ended up staying there for a week. They ran all different kinds of tests. I got the infamous COVID-19 test. That's made this whole journey very interesting in and of itself. And all that came back negative. There were no signs of infection. They ran the blood samples every day, coming in at 4 a.m. to take blood. And every single time it came back negative. And so they ended up doing a CAT scan, which showed that I likely had a blood clot in my body, which the blood results showed as well when I went into the hospital that day. And so it showed that it was likely in my right arm. And so they ended up doing an ultrasound of my right arm and found out that I had an extensive blood clot from right about here that went all the way up my arm, underneath my armpit, and up into my neck where the port was. And it was what they called a catheter-induced blood clot. It was caused by the port that was in there. And so while the majority of the doctors wanted to take it out right away, at this point, I had 5 more infusions. And the last 2 were the bleomycin that were manual IV pushes, and so those could be manually done if they needed to be. And so my doctor really wanted to not do another surgery and to just try to push through and not have to do that. But the port continued to give me some issues. My arm appeared purple sometimes. It causes some discomfort in it. I can still actually feel the clot underneath my armpit, which is a little scary. And so he made the decision to go ahead and take the port out early. And so I had the port removed last Wednesday, and they're going to do my last bleomycin as an IV in my arm and do the manual push that way. So that will be the first time that I've ever done that on Monday. that will be interesting, and I'm pretty glad that that will be the last time as well that they have to do that. I'm tired of being poked at this point. But as I get towards the end of this next step, I've always kind of joked that the theme of this journey has been another step. Every time I learned something, there seemed to be an extra step involved. I learned that I had cancer, and then I learned that it had spread and chemo was going to be necessary, and they couldn't just do an orchiectomy. Then when I found that out, I found out that I actually had 2 different types of testicular cancer, and that 90% of the mass that they removed was teratoma, which is the kind of testicular cancer that is resistant to chemo. And so that means that that cancer will have continued to grow during this time and will need to be removed with a major surgery. Again, another major step. And so, well, I thought at the beginning of this journey I would be really excited to get to this point and be finishing chemo. It's really been an emotional ride. Sorry, guys. It's been really stressful. There's been a lot of anxiety. Not knowing what the next step is exactly. Because so much of that mass was teratoma, it's almost certainly going to mean that next step is a major surgery. But I'm praying for a miracle that maybe that won't be the case. So we'll see. The end of this chemo journey means that it's time for them to redo my CAT scans and lab work and all of those tests and see what those look like and see if the chemo did its job. And so that is a bit of a scary thing, I guess. I never felt like I had cancer. I've never really felt, you don't feel cancer. So you really have no idea if it's worked or not. And my journey has been quite easy compared to some people. I've met people who have vomited so much during their chemo cycle that they had to have blood transfusions. And so to know that my symptoms were just nausea and heartburn and acid reflux shows me how blessed I've been and with this whole journey. And then getting close to the end is exciting, of course. It means the end of another step, the ringing of the bell, or the nurses coming over and clapping, whatever that is. But I've also been reminded in this journey that not everybody makes it to this step that I am. And that's been tough too. It's a little hard to celebrate when you know that not everybody gets to make it this far. So I'm thankful that the Lord has brought me to this step, and I'm eager to see what the next step is. I would like for it to not be a major surgery, but I know it probably will be. And if that's the case, my body will need about 4 to 6 weeks to recover from the chemo. And then they'll do the major surgery. I'm not even sure if my parents will get to be with me for that, with all the COVID restrictions. So that's tough. Once I have that surgery, I'll be in the hospital for about a week, and then it'll be another 6 to 8 week recovery after that. Which is tough because not only does that mean I'll be not able to get back into the gym, which I'm really excited to do, but it also means I'll miss more work, which has been really hard on me as well. I miss working with my clients and working with my colleagues at the chamber and out in the community. So I'm really excited to get back to work there. But it's one step at a time, and if there's been one motto that I've learned in all of this, it's that it does get better. So whatever you're going through out there, just know it does get better. You gotta have some bad days to show you what the good ones are like. And I have had one amazing support system through all of this. These are all cards that I've received throughout my time here. So thank you for making me smile or laugh during all this. Humor's been a way that I've really been able to cope with all of this. This was from my little niece. Y'all really showed out with the GoFundMe and the online auction and cookie sales and all kinds of different things that you've done to help raise money. But I haven't had to worry about that during this journey, and for that I am forever grateful. This year I did something a little different for my birthday. I asked for gift cards to restaurants since I'm not able to go out and eat right now. And once again, y'all did not disappoint. So thank you. And I look forward to doing more of these and talking more about my journey. And I'm sure they'll get a little better as we go along. So thank you for tuning in. Hope you'll subscribe to my channel and follow me on my journey and on the next step, whatever that may be. And thank you for watching this far.